Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. The sign out on front should tell you so. I am breaking out like the Jaws shark, moving up into the screen. The skipjacks. This is not the Steve Seftel. This is my keeper jersey. This was a little giveaway, iron on. Some of the stuff's falling off of it. And when I bring hockey gear on, you know it's time for my hockey nerd buddies. Ted Starkey has become one of those guys over the course of time. I can't say that we knew each other well back in the 80s or the 90s when this whole mess began and your quest for the Cup and the Capitals began. I've had Ed Frankovic on this week. He talked about going to games in 1973-74 with his pop. I've known his pop forever. He talked about years. Ed went a whole year last year not going to a Caps game for the first time in his life since 1973. You and I famously were together when the magic moment happened, when the Washington Capitals won the Stanley Cup. You were to my right. My wife was to my left in Ed Frankovic's seat up next to the Golden Tower of whatever the hell that is in Las Vegas. And I think you and I have had a conversation or two since then, but not too many more. Ted Starkey is at Newsday on Long Island where they're going to play hockey, at least in the Cosmos, from Toronto in a bubble. He is around Barry Trotz and covering the Islanders and was when things went away. No one loves hockey more than you, Starkey. I follow you. I love your little coach bench thing, whatever the hell that series is. You can tell me whatever that is. And I will let you introduce yourself to our audience for those unfortunate souls who are not familiar with your work on Frozen Pond.
Well, as you know, my Twitter feed's a little bit informative and a little bit off the wall, but I have fun with it. I've obviously been around the game for about 2 decades now. Most recently, I wrote a book on the AHL a couple of years ago with interviewing Mr. Barry Trotz, who's a great individual. Covered the Capitals for a couple of years for the Washington Times, and now I do some video and other stuff for Newsday. Obviously, my job's changed the last couple of months with everything going on, but it's nice to have some hockey back, even though it's August and 100 degrees out. We're talking Caps and Islanders, which is a little bit strange.
Yeah, okay, so, let me take you from there to here, because I talked to Ed about this, and you can find that out in the buyatoyota.com audio vault if you're a hockey fan. If this means anything to you, if this jersey, or if I had the black and gold, Alain Lemieux, and Gene Ubriaco, and I might call Ubi this week. I might call all my hockey nerds, my hockey mafia from the 80s, maybe even Howard Scher and Joe DeFonso and Desiree and all of my old friends, and talk some hockey. This is a weird week, right? I saw you in Vegas. We were together, and I went to the party afterward. I guess you wrote into the night. You had flown in. It was weird. Freddie Traub went to the party with me that night, and we sat in the corner with Trotz, and it was unbelievable to see what a pariah he was, kind of, sort of, even at his own Stanley Cup party, where everybody sort of knew the end was nigh. They allegedly were going to get in the room and try to patch things up. Bring me from that point to here, because we haven't caught up, that if you were in the corner at the bar with me, and saying, catch me up on what happened to Trotz and what happened since Nestor was out in the street in front of the Washington Monument. And I shared that picture with you last week. I don't know, did you ever see that picture I took of the selfie of me and Trotz?
Not before, no.
And, I mean, dude, that picture is like one for the ages. Like, if I'm going to write and talk about my hockey experience and my last moment as a Capitals fan, that picture is the moment it happened, right? And 4 days later, Trotz is gone. And he's running off to the Islanders. And this is where the story gets weird for you, right? Because you live in Long Island and have been there a while, but are entangled with the entire history of the Caps franchise and writing books going on 3 decades about the Caps, right? So bring me up to speed on the weirdness that Barry Trotz came back into my life after being the Skipjacks coach and the Western League scout back in the 1980s when I was 19 years old. And between you and me and Trotz and Frankovic and the Islanders and the Capitals and the Skipjacks and the Predators and David Poyle and all this weirdness of 3 or 4 decades of hockey, it kind of makes the world go around that I find you on the phone 2.5 years after the most incredible thing happened, which was, Trotz has handed me the Stanley Cup and we're eating salad out of it,
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure I told you before, I think the problem was about halfway through that season. The word on the street was Todd. That Barry Trotz and Brian McClellan weren't exactly seeing on the same page for certain players. Personnel issues started to seem to bubble up, and I think we went into the playoffs knowing that was probably Barry's last ride with the Caps. I don't think the Caps thought that they would go all the way to the final. I mean, obviously, they could have lost that game 3 to Columbus in the first round. None of this ever happens. Barry leaves, and everyone's happier for the wiser. But, the team always valued Todd Reardon. They always seemed to want to prevent him from getting a head coaching gig somewhere else. And so I think, in a way, the Cup win complicated it a bit because, obviously, Barry did what no one else could do, is win a Stanley Cup with the Washington Capitals. But, I think the Caps made a decision to go with Todd Reardon. They felt that they were going to tune out Barry, and luckily for Barry, I thought it was going to take a little while for him to get a good gig, but it didn't take him long. There were some changes in New York. They demoted Gar Snow, who was their general manager, brought in Lou Lamoriello, who ran the New Jersey Devils and Toronto Maple Leafs, and they hired Barry Trotz. And to be honest about Long Island, they made Barry Trotz a rock star. They adore him. They cheer his name at games. He is the Messiah who has come in with the Stanley Cup ring. The Islanders, the season Barry came in, they lost John Tavares, who's their best star, number 1 draft pick in 2009. And
did he leave he left after Barry signed, right?
He did. I think the Islanders originally thought that it would help keep Tavares in town. It was a weird situation. He was an unrestricted free agent. They didn't really talk much during that season about.
Well, the whole thing about them playing in Brooklyn and the city and the owner and it was a little adrift, right? If you're kind of like Manny Machado signing up in Baltimore, or signing somewhere where you're not really sure, is that really where I want to be, right?
Right. I mean, they finally the Coliseum has been such a bane of Islanders fans' existence for years because it was a lot like the Cap Center. It was out in the suburbs. People can party in the parking lot before going to games. So
I've only been there once in my life, dude.
Yep, it's basically the same single bowl arena. You don't have a lot of you have suites that are just up at the very top, like the old building. But they were trying to replace it for years, and eventually the NHL and management just said we need a new building, and they weren't building it, so. They decided to move to Brooklyn for a couple of years, but quietly the team changed hands. John Ledecky, who was one of Ted's partners when he bought the Caps back in 1999, now owns the Islanders. They were working with the governor, and they got a new arena being built right now in Belmont Park, right next to the racetrack, which will be ready supposedly by the beginning of 2021-22. So obviously that'll be a big help for the franchise in terms of stability, because obviously they've been playing in an antiquated barn for about 15 years and then a one that didn't exactly fit the NHL model. So it'll be nice for them to have their own building to basically plant their flag and play games there.
Well, and I guess let's take us back here with Trotz, because my wife got cancer in March of 2014. And I remember she was in heavy chemo and very, very ill when he became the coach in that spring. And the following spring, my wife was feeling better, and I did a bunch of the playoff games that kind of made a presence at playoff time and going to games. We had been running buses down there through 3 coaches before Trotz got there, right? And then in 16, I went on the beauty tour of after my wife survived the second time, but going up to New York for Game 7 and the Rangers and all this stuff. Then there was the Toronto trip that I went on, right, in Tampa. So I went Pittsburgh. I spent a week and a half in Pittsburgh. I went to the game with Tomlin, where Game 6 they blew him out. The whole deal. So I had been on all of this journey and had the backstage access to talk to Kuznetsov and to see how, certain guys behave, the grown-ups in the room, the guys the defensemen that they brought over, and how they all how PR worked, how the visiting media worked, how the Canadian media. So I got to catch up and freshen up after really being away from the game for 20 years, right? I mean, there was no hockey here. I was the beat guy in the 80s, early 90s. Team moved into the city. They wore the St. Louis Blues jerseys for a number of years. I think you remember that. And, Dale Hunter and Adam Oates and these guys weren't my guys. I mean, Olaf Kolzig, my guy, but after that, not so much. So there was a period where I didn't even watch a lot of hockey. I met my wife at a hockey game, and I was going to Nashville for a decade, going to games, going to Philadelphia. I saw the Predators play on the road in probably 15 rinks. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I saw him play in San Jose. I saw him play in the Forum. I saw him play in St. Louis. I saw him play at the Garden. I saw him play at the United Center. I saw him play in Tampa. I saw him play in Miami. So I saw him play in Nashville a bunch. So I was a Predators guy and a Trotz guy. Then my wife gets sick and Trotz gets the job, and I'm doing Caps trips, and I'm sort of Eddie's blogging, and I'm like, man, I got so much bread in the closet. So I get in. Fast forward to the end of this journey of Toronto and Pittsburgh and Tampa and 3 a.m. leaving Madison Square Garden, getting yelled at by Sally Jenkins because I'm doing radio with Frankovic at 3 in the morning, up on the roof at the Garden, and taking trains back, and, all of that, to actually have them win, right, and to be sitting next to you and have Trotz be a part of it. And sort of having spent that 10-day period, maybe more than that, maybe it was more like a 30-day period through Tampa, and spending time with all the media, all the broadcasters, all the players, watching the players play hacky sack and kick a soccer ball, and do all the things that they do underneath these frozen rinks that we have witnessed to, right? And to see that Trotz was mistreated in the way he was, and universally, sort of everybody knew it, right? Like, everybody was onto this, that they wanted Reardon, that they had sort of negotiated all of this, that they wanted to fire Trotz, but the players may have revolted or whatever. And it ends with a parade, and it ends with them really just sort of being cheapskates in the end, and then making the wrong decision in the end and getting rid of him. And now I'm on the phone with you, okay, Ted Starkey. 2 years later, in a pandemic, it's almost like Ali Frazier got postponed, right? And they moved the Rumble and right? So they've moved this Rumble now to Toronto, right? Where John Tavares can sit upstairs and watch them all play, right? And I didn't even understand the bubble. I swear to God, I woke up this morning thinking they were playing games in like Vegas or Phoenix or somewhere else in America. I didn't realize the whole sport left America, like literally, like I woke up realizing this, and I didn't know anything about the round robin. My wife put it on last Sunday, and it was like, this thing's hard enough, right? The pandemic, it's hard. Like, for me to put on fake sports, to put on fake baseball, 7-inning baseball, light baseball in the mud down in D.C., fake Steve Strasburg, waiting on maybe fake football as opposed to fake college football they shouldn't be playing. So I want something to be real. And the more I think about this hockey thing, the more I think, like, they're not unfortunately, the Flyers are not going to get COVID, okay? So they're going to stay in the tournament. Like, that to me, it feels to me, the more I hear about it, that, like, they're going to play a real Stanley Cup playoffs here. There's no fans. It feels really, really hollow and weird to me. But if you want to put some blood on the bricks that I could get interested in Barry Trotz's hockey team beating Ted Leonsis' hockey team, you're probably going to get my attention at 3 o'clock in the afternoon this week, Ted.
Well, it's also, the difference is, if you look at, I've been watching some baseball games, and a lot of teams, you can tell, are just going through the motions. Watching some of the qualifying play was tremendous. It's such a weird situation. You're playing in an empty building with tarps where the fans should be, but the intensity is there. I think that's the one thing that I've noticed, particularly between baseball. Baseball, it seems like they're kind of dead sport walking right now. The Cardinals can't play anywhere. Teams are getting tested left and right. And you
know what really makes a difference? A good broadcaster could keep you in a game. You know, and
exactly.
I don't have that here. I don't have John Miller here. I mean, I mean, Ben McDonald's doing games for really the first time here as a team with Scott Garceau, and and they're winning a little bit, right? So, like, there's a short track and all this. But, I mean, I had Howard Eskin on earlier. You can go hear that in the buyatoyota.com audio vault as well. Any of us over 50 white guys who love baseball and have always loved baseball would just put this on, and it's not a real good product. I mean, you have to really love baseball if you want to dedicate. After 6 months of sitting at home with a mask on, that I'm going to sit at home and watch this instead of, like, how to make a better casserole or hockey or any of the other things that are available. I'm almost, like, willing to buy into the hockey a little bit. But, dude, hockey where nobody high-fives and hockey where it's not playoff. You know, I'm having a hard time buying into the set. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, and I'm having a hard time with that with baseball, and I'm not going to lie about that. I don't know how football's going to go. I don't know how I'm going to feel about it. I mean, and I've likened it to the fact that I love music so much, but if the Rolling Stones came and played for just me and my wife in the living room, it wouldn't be nearly as much fun as all the pain in the ass of having to go drive and park, even at FedEx Field. You know what I mean? There's something about it and people that really – sports really lacks it. And hockey, hockey, it's like that's the jam. You know what I mean? That's the thing that kind of makes it special for me.
Right, and it's just different because obviously they have the audio pumped in, and it's just not the same. They've tried their best, like they've done their best job to try to replicate it. I know they've got basically they tried to create a formula to try to create some meaningful games, but I mean, the best way you can kind of look at it, it's like a popcorn movie in the summer. You kind of have to say it's not really the conclusion to the 2019-20 season. It's like if you remember, when they used to have the Canada Cup or the World Cup, they would play these games in August and September. Obviously, there was crowds there, but it has no tangible connection to the season, which it doesn't. I mean, it's been so the time between the end of the regular season and the beginning of this is longer than a summer for most teams. So it's basically just an entertainment product. I mean, it is what it is. I mean,
it's an exhibition. It's a tournament.
It's entertainment, and you're not going to have the best team isn't going to win because it's going to be teams in this they have a little bit of time to ramp up to get there. They've been in the bubble, and I'm sure teams. There's some teams that will do well being together for 2 or 3 weeks by themselves, and there are teams that won't. That's the way human nature. It just seems like, I think the playoff games they've been rough in terms of the quality of play, but I think the intensity is there, which is, what a lot of people see. But like you said, it's hard to feed off no crowd. And I think a lot of players have acknowledged that, you score a goal, there's artificial cheering, but there's no one in the stands. It's just really strange. But, I give them credit. They crafted a good plan.
Yeah, you do, right? So we don't always give him credit, right? Like, so
right.
Ted Starkey is our guest. He's the internet news manager for Newsday. He's a great hockey historian and writer, author of Red Rising and Chasing the Dream. You can find him at Ted Starkey. That's Starkey. And I just want to say for a hockey fan, okay, and I am a hockey fan. I met my wife at a hockey game. Hockey's my first love. I love the people of hockey. I have not liked the way the Washington Capitals have treated my community, or me, or Barry Trotz, or lots of other people. So I've become a conscientious objector. I've just decided the juice wasn't worth the squeeze after the Stanley Cup and walking off the ice literally with you, Ted. We walked onto the ice together, literally, in Las Vegas that night and walked off together after Tony Robbins is skating around with Ovechkin with the cup. And that's the last time I gave hockey any mind. And, there's been a game here and again, like the Islanders played the Caps 2 years ago, and that first Friday night I watched the first period and thought, I don't really care. And I haven't been to a game. I haven't thought of going to a game. I haven't thought of paying to go to a game. I haven't watched a game. I haven't put it on. I love Craig Laughlin. I love Joe Beninati. I watched a little bit on Sunday against the Bruins because I realized from following, literally, Ted, congratulations, from following you on Twitter, I realized that there was a chance with the Bruins that they were going to play each other. I didn't realize that before noon on Sunday. And now I'm ramping up into, and I said to my wife, Lou Pellegrino is my dear friend and former producer of my Nasty Nationwide show. He's a big Islander fan and producer of Dan Patrick, amongst other things. And I'll grab him at some point in the next week, too, because it's fun talking to him, too. I love him. Like I love you, and I love anybody. I love hockey. You my hockey friends, right? So,
right.
He was tweeting in the middle of the day, like games were on, and I'm like, the hell are they doing? And I didn't care enough to know enough, and I'm doing other programming, and I'm talking about saving the country and like all this other stuff, guns, education, crime, important things, close to home, the grown-up things. So I didn't even pay any attention to it because I'm just out of it. I've just decided the NHL doesn't fit where I am in my life at this point. I will connect to Barry Trotz when the time comes. I will be that guy when the playoffs starts. Wake me, right? And I was going to be the guy because the Caps and the Islanders were going to meet, right? Like they were on some sort of pathway at one point, right? And now they're going to meet. So I'm awakened. And Lou's tweets awakened me to the fact that it's sort of like the World Cup, right? Like they're staging these games so that it sort of disrupts your workday in the way that the old ALCS and NLCS did that for us when we were kids and George Brett had pine tar.
Right. I mean, if anything the NHL brings forward to this, they've kind of had a March Madness feel because obviously they're only using 2 arenas, so you can't stage more than 2 games at once. And so it's been fabulous for hockey fans because, you've had days where it's, you wake up at noon, there's hockey, and it goes all the way to 1:30 in the morning. Then the next day, you repeat the process. So you can kind of tune in, tune out.
This is Trump's big move to screw up the GDP for Canada. That's what this is right here. I'll politicize this. You're damn right I will.
Yeah, but, it's basically, it's all-day hockey. And what it is, it kind of, normally in playoff year, you'll have 4 or 5 games going off at 7 o'clock, in the evenings. You got to pick which one you want to watch. This one you don't.
Just an attempt to do what COVID couldn't do, shut down Canada.
Exactly. I mean, give credit to Canada because if it wasn't for their responsible response to this,
let's have a festival, eh?
Yep. Well, like you were saying earlier about, the NHL originally wanted one of these in Vegas. They were going to have the Stanley Cup there. They were going to have the conference finals there. But, as the numbers went up in Nevada, that's when they decided, well, our best bet to get the bubble working is to have 2 Canadian cities because obviously the positive test rate is much lower than it is here. So
yeah, if they wanted to legitimize this thing, they'd move the finals to Le Colisée. You know what I'm talking about.
Exactly. Yes, that's available.
They got testing. Ted Starkey's here from Newsday. All right, so, is there anything you want to say in retrospect about the Trotz treatment, the contract, 2 years later, the bad blood, the fact that you live 10 minutes from the rink up on Long Island, the fact that you go back with Trotz to the AHL the way I do and wrote a book in part with him, and where are we on the Trotz, Leonsis, Caps, Islanders, Ovechkin, your guys, my guys? Just set the tone for all of this. If you and I are doing a 15-minute piece right now, setting the stage to get everybody lathered up, people like me and my wife who literally stopped following the soap opera, literally, and I have a lot of friends that just turn on at playoff time and probably do have some affinity for Barry Trotz, and I'm probably not the only one that just stopped watching the Caps after that, to some degree.
Yep. Well, you know what? The interesting thing is, like I was saying earlier, I think you knew about halfway through the season because we'd heard the reports that, they weren't talking. It almost was like during the playoffs that year, Barry was so relaxed because I think he knew he wasn't like a normal coach. He didn't have to audition for a job. He knew that he wasn't going to be able. Knew he was probably going to move on, and I just got the sense that he was more relaxed, I think, than he was in previous playoff years, and I think that really fed into his players because obviously, if you retrace the steps of that Stanley Cup run, there's about 3 spots where it could have derailed. Game 3 in Columbus, when they were going into overtime, a lot of the players privately have said, if we lose that game, we lose that series, team is probably blown up. Then you had Game 5 against Pittsburgh the next round. They were losing 3-2 going into Game 5, the third period. It didn't look good. They lost Nicholas Backstrom to injury. And if they lose that game, they probably don't win Game 6, or if they win Game 6, they don't win Game 7. Then Game 6 against Tampa, they come in, they lost 3 in a row. They played pretty well, but had some bad luck in Games 3 through 5. Came back, and then they played a great Game 6, and then obviously won in Game 7. And, those are 3 spots where that team, probably in past years, may have derailed. But I think Barry really kept the players' attention. He kept them a little relaxed. They weren't on edge as they had been in previous years. And I think that's a huge credit to why they won. I think Barry was really connected with the players. I think he did an excellent job of kind of keeping them, level-headed and not panicking when all the world around him is panicking. And then, they had the final, and then by the time they reached the final, even they had a hiccup in game one, you kind of had a feeling that this was going to be their year. And then, Barry kind of, when they won the cup, I was like, well, maybe there's a chance he stays. Obviously, they really wanted Todd, and, I knew Barry would not take long to get a job. I didn't think it would take him 4 days to get another job, but, he found a place where he kind of recreates Nashville, if you will. I think this is a team that's not necessarily loaded with talent, but they play his style. They bought into his system. They like Barry. The fans like Barry. The ownership likes Barry, and I think he found a home. And I think, it seemed like the Caps and Barry was going to end one way or the other. If they lose game 3 of that series to Columbus, he'd have been fired probably next day or two. But it worked out for Barry. The Capitals last year, you can give them a little bit of having fatigue from the Cup run, but this year I think Todd has had a little bit tough time connecting with the players like Barry did, because I think there were times that the rumored he may be on the way out, and they had worried about Barry being tuned out. Well, Todd was in the room too, and there's kind of evidence that looks like they're tuning him out a bit. So his job may be on the line, maybe not over the summer/winter, but I think he's going to be on a very short leash if they don't go very far.
Yeah, I showed Ed Frankovic, and I showed the folks on the screen who are watching us on YouTube or our Facebook Live, the have yourself a Barry little Christmas Christmas T-shirts that were available up on Long Island. I would love to get one of these if I could. I would wear it throughout the week to support Coach, but for the series and where it is, and to your point, whether this is a real Stanley Cup, you get your name on it, whatever, and at what point it becomes blood and guts and all that. But it's the beginning of a tournament here. Assess the league versus what baseball and the other things have done. And I've said we're hockey fans. We're also been very critical, right? And I break out those old pictures of me with the commish back in the window at Mickey Mantle's 20 years ago when he's feeling his way after John Ziegler and all that. And 20 years later, he's still here, 2 strikes later and whatever nonsense has gone on the last 20 years, that in the middle of this, they're staging this tournament and they might pull this off. And I mean, holy hell, we're all bored, right? And I'm watching baseball, but it doesn't matter and doesn't matter. And if it does matter, the Orioles will wake me next month and tell me, but I don't think it'll matter. This sort of could feel like it could matter if hockey fans stand at attention. They're trying to get the attention of people like me that haven't watched hockey in 2 years or 6 months, right? Either way, nobody's watched hockey. And they're trying to sort of awaken this very unnatural bear from that hibernation of August to come out and watch hockey in a blimp for hockey's sake. And this is the kind of thing they need. They need Ali Frazier. They need Nestor to sit up and wear his Predator jersey to support Trotz. I mean, I don't know, whatever the hell I'm going to. By the way, do you have an Islander hat or something do you have anything you could send me, like a scarf, something? I mean, I'm going to ask Pellegrino. I think he's got a whole closet. I'm not going to wear anything with Dennis Potvin on it. I'm going to tell you right now. So don't even think about sending me that.
Arranged.
There will be no Dennis Potvin in this hat. Bossy, fine. Trottier, maybe, but never Potvin. He sucks.
Yeah, no, it's. I mean, I think the difference with baseball is baseball just got so into the finances of it, and it became such an ugly labor dispute. I mean, it's hard to say that the NHL actually looks competent compared to the other team sports, but baseball just looks like a mess. I mean, baseball basically went on a plan of let's hope nothing goes wrong. And well, you know what? The Miami Marlins got sick, and then the Cardinals got sick, and now you're having 7-inning games, and you're having double headers and 7-game series. It just at some point, it's like a softball league. It gets rained out. Let's go play at this other field. Okay.
Well, you know what? If Angelos would pay his Lerner bill, they might get a grounds crew that could actually, pull the tarp out,
Oh, that was, I mean, that's just emblematic of this entire season. You expect something to happen, and now you have a postponement because you can't even get your ground crew to cover the infield in time.
That was not a world championship effort, was it? That was a Washington Senators effort.
It was like, I remember the first year that the Nationals played at RFK, they had a game against Atlanta, and they had something similar happen. It was dumping, and they couldn't figure out how to do the tarp. But, they've had 6 weeks at that park before they played a road game, and, you can't even get the tarp out. It's ridiculous. But, the NHL, I'll give them a lot of credit for what they planned ahead. They took their time. They did it right. They didn't expose players to risks. They basically told players, you're going to be, up in Canada for X amount of weeks. You're going to be in a hotel. They're not allowed to leave the hotel at all. There's some activities they can do, but, they're staying put. And they had, as of this week, they had no positive tests for 2 straight weeks in the bubble. So, all power to them. They did an excellent job putting this together under tough circumstances. Obviously, personally for me, it'd be nice to go see the last time the Islanders and the Capitals met. I ended up covering every game in the series. It'd be nice to do that, but I looked into going up to Toronto and covering some games, but it's a 2-week quarantine, mandatory, and that's difficult to justify for a lot of media outlets and any organization. And there's a limited amount of U.S. reporters up there, but some have made it. But it's different, but it's kind of like the best you can make out of a really tough situation for. Obviously, this is so small in the whole scheme of things right now, but it offers hockey fans a little bit of entertainment and something to keep them busy for the next couple of weeks.
I would say it is a tournament to end all tournaments, the chase for Lord Stanley's goblet and chalice. Once brought Ted Starkey on a late-night flight into Las Vegas, into the desert to have a dust with the cup. That's where I left you 26 months ago. The drama continues this week, Ted Starkey. I appreciate you, miss all my hockey friends, but do follow you out on the internet every time a coach is posted behind the bench, especially when it's an old skipjack like a Quenville or somebody like that. I appreciate it even more. Stay in touch, and we'll continue to follow the journey here. And if you got something Islanders to send me, just send it to Nestor Aparicio here in Baltimore. All right?
Yeah, I can do that.
Just a pin or something would be fine on my hat. Ted Starkey can be found at Ted Starkey out on Twitter and also as the internet news manager at Newsday on Long Island up there where they're playing a good brand of hockey, and the Gorton's fisherman has been retired for the great Barry Trotz. That'd be funny. Trotz, like on the raft doing that thing. That'd be kind of cool. I'll get him on at some point when he's got some downtime in Toronto. He's got nothing else to do. Nasty at WNST.net, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live, local, with my Skipjacks jersey and talking hockey. Pimping the puck in August. The ratings are up.